Hello to all the comic fans, Marvel geeks, and all the nerds in between. Welcome to another episode of the new and improved Vigilante Vibes, where we talk all things Marvel, along with other fandoms, but without the toxicity that's taken up way too much space in each and every fandom. I'm your host, Meg Nicole, and today I have a very special guest. He's created books and stories like Codename Scarlet, Star Phoenix, Vampocalypse, just to name a few. Please welcome Ed Brown, or author E.S. Brown.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We've talked back and forth for so long, probably like 2 years now, and we finally got you on here.
Oh, this is really cool. I'm really excited to be here. And I just want to start off by saying I love everything that you and the other admins have been doing on the Facebook page and the way you've been able to run with this podcast after all the stuff that went down. So thank you, and thank you all for that because I know everyone in the group just loves you all for that. But I wanted to express it also for me personally.
Oh my gosh, thank you. For those listening, he's talking about our Facebook group on Facebook, the Nerd Haven, which is a non toxic nerd group where you can express your opinions, talk about everything without toxicity, which clearly I'm a big fan of. So thank you so much for saying that. You've been nothing but a joy in that group. There's a few people in that group where if I get a notification that they commented, I'm like, oh, whew, a nice one.
Well, I can change that for you to keep you on your toes if you like.
You don't have to. You don't have to do all that. That's okay. So, what we're really here for, you are a big author. Everything I've seen from you looks fantastic. It just, I'm excited for you because you're doing so many big things, and I can't fathom being a person that has that many ideas in their head. Like, that takes a true talent, and I'm just really happy for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's not quite the day job yet,
Mm-hmm.
but getting there, one book at a time. And if nothing else, it's a lot of fun. I have a fabulous publisher, an independent publisher out of Kentucky, excuse me, called Line by Lion
Mm-hmm.
Publishing, that they are just awesome and so easy to work with. And I wouldn't be able to do this without them because they do a lot of the legwork and heavy lifting. All I have to do is provide them a manuscript. and, but then they're very collaborative on the artwork. I get a lot of compliments on the covers. Um, and so I can provide my ideas and thoughts, and their in-house artist, Thomas Lampkin Jr., is amazing. And so I got to give shout outs, sorry, to those
Of
folks
course.
where I can. But yeah, um, it's a lot of fun, and it gets me out there, and I have stories to tell. But no, it's crazy trying to keep them all straight in my head.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, that's always what goes through my head. I'm like, how do they know? How do they just keep it in there, locked in there in a filing cabinet?
Well, one of my biggest uh, fears is that someday I'll get to the point where I'm big enough to where folks seek me out at like conventions and whatnot. And let me backtrack a little bit. There's actually a few folks that do already just to buy my new books and to see what I have out that's new, which is amazing. And I'm just so in awe of that. And that is so awesome. It's such a great feeling and being able
Yeah.
to see these folks year after year at the conventions that I do. But my biggest fear is that someday someone's going to show up and start pointing out all the problems and plot holes from where, oh, well, back in the first book they said this, so they can't possibly be doing this now in book three. How did that happen? And blah blah blah. The problems that people like George Lucas have, from their fans. Someday I long to have those problems, but at the same time I fear them.
it it's something I never thought about until I think it was Josh Brolin said that MCU fans come up to him and say, "You were so good as Thanos, but did you ever think if you had the power to get rid of half the universe, then you also had the power to give more resources?" And he was like, "Bro, I just play Thanos. Like, stop." And I was like, "Imagine if you were the one that wrote the script."
Right, exactly. It's like, dude, I'm not. So I'm just showing up to get paid for a gig.
Yeah. That is a big thing to wonder, but it's also like that, like someone could take that as you're really that into it. You were paying that much attention. So that's something,
Yeah.
but it's also like, damn, man. Do you give them a prize? Like, huh, you're the first person to point it out. This was my plan all along.
Right. Exactly. It's like, oh, yay. Here you go. A no prize.
So, what got you started as a writer? Was there a particular moment or event that made you decide to pursue writing seriously?
Well, the catalyst for me wanting to become a writer was when I saw, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, the original Star Wars in a
Yeah.
movie theater when I was 7 years old. Um, and I mean, obviously, no one at the time had seen anything like that, and so my experience in that regard isn't unique, but it is what made me want to go home. I mean, immediately that night, I sat down, I pulled out paper, and I started writing down basically fan fiction based upon what I just saw, and with terrible spellings because I didn't really quite remember all the characters' names and whatnot, and I didn't know, or I remember that I didn't know how to express necessarily action in writing, and
Yeah.
so my expressing action in that story was writing out the sound effects like the pew pews and things like that, to get my point across that they're shooting lasers and
They do it in
whatnot.
comic books.
They
Flip.
do, right?
Yeah, so you were on the right track.
Exactly. So that's what made me want to become a writer. But then, life takes you where life takes you, and I didn't revisit the whole idea until about the year 2000. I started just having ideas for it. Originally, I really, really wanted to make a comic book. And
Oh.
I had ideas for what my characters looked like and the powers they would have. But then I realized that that would take a lot of work because I would want to draw it, and I can draw, but I'm very slow
Oh.
at it because I don't do it very often.
Okay.
So I didn't pursue that and decided, well, I can write. And at that point, I was far enough in my life where I knew I was a decent writer. So I decided to start putting notes down and culling them into larger paragraphs and chapters and stories. And my first book took me almost 15 years from the very first notes I remember on post-its and napkins that I threw in a box to actual publication.
Wow, that's amazing though. I like that. So you just had these post-it notes with like ideas or things to remind you of, and you threw it in a box, and then do you still have the box?
No, I mean, and I say box, but it was a binder,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I still have the binder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
and it had it's got no paper, notebook paper in it, sure, but then it's got little folders, so all the loose stuff was just going into the folder. So yeah, I still have all that, and a lot of the old notes, no, I threw away
Oh.
those originally. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. You still have it. So, speaking about from the beginning, what challenges did you face when you first started writing, and what ways did you overcome them? You did speak about you couldn't write action, so you wrote pew pew pew.
Right. Well, that wasn't so or as much of a thing, once I actually sat down to write, when I was, 30 and 40 years old versus 7. So, but then I also had the luxury or luck or good fortune to have a writing coach in an author by the name of Steve Alton, who is the author of the best-selling novels of the Meg series that the actual Meg movies are based on.
Oh.
So,
Whoa.
so he actually helped me with my very first novel through his writing coach program, and I mean, he was like the strictest of college professors. The way he would just tear into the crap I would throw at him that I thought, oh, this is brilliant, and he comes back, he's like, yeah, not as brilliant as you think. Here's all the red marks, and you need to improve this and change that. But after working with him for a couple of years, it really refined my writing, and I learned quickly what I was doing wrong and how easily to just adjust and move on. And by the later months and the chapters that I would send to him, there wasn't nearly as much throwback of the junk. It's like, no, this is great. Just little tweaks here and there, and so I was able to learn a lot that way initially, that way through him and his program.
Wow, that's really cool. That's such a big deal. He like the Meg is huge. That's crazy.
Yeah.
S- So
Yeah, I was very very lucky to be able to work with him on that.
yeah, that's amazing. Um, so you did say that Star Wars is a thing that like got the fire, I guess the flame lit, you could say. Was there a specific author or book that influenced your decision or like shaped your style in any way?
Mm, well, definitely some from Steve Alton. I mean, how can it not be?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
I've read a ton of his books, and then of course through his coaching. But then I'm a huge Ian Fleming fan from James Bond.
Yeah.
Um, the style of writing is that he did. I just loved, and I actually tried to employ some of that in my writing of Codename Scarlet because Codename Scarlet is essentially a female James Bond character with secret gadgets and exotic locations and whatnot. So I modeled a lot of how he wrote in how I wrote those books, but with less misogyny and racism, to be fair.
You
So, because he did have a degree of that in his books,
yeah.
for what it's worth. Uh, those I left with him, and I took the other things I could take from his writing and developed it from there.
Well, on behalf of women, we appreciate the lack of misogyny you have.
Right on. I have an amazing beta reader uh, who actually complimented me on a couple of the scenes and how I handled them in Codename Scarlet because she mentioned how some writers will tend to get more descriptive than they need to about things when really this is all that's happening. So all you got to do is say this, and so she was very appreciative about how I went about that, which made me feel really good.
I completely understand her complaints. So that's amazing. That's awesome to hear. That's cool. So can you describe your writing routine? Like what do you do when you first get an idea and you're like, this is gonna be a book?
So I mean, what I can get ideas anytime,
Mm-hmm.
day or night, and I actually in my phone I have a OneNote, Microsoft OneNote, and it's broken up into at this point probably a dozen different tabs of different story ideas. And so when I have an idea, if it's part of a story that I already have going on, I mean, I have a Star Phoenix tab, I have a Scarlet tab, for those ongoing stories, and but then I have a bunch of tabs for stories that I hopefully someday will be able to develop. But yeah, when I ever get a new idea, I just either start a new tab or I just plop it into one of the applicable tabs, so that way I don't forget about it and it's there right there. And then when I go to write, which is on my laptop, I pull up the OneNote on my laptop, and then all I have to do is copy and paste from that, so I don't have to rewrite it or have to worry about pieces of paper or anything like that anymore. The days of the post-its and the napkins are long gone with technology. Uh, but yeah, so that's what I do when I get new ideas. Otherwise, I'll forget them. I mean, they'll be out of my brain as quickly as they pop in. Sometimes if I don't do something about it right then and there.
I could see that. That would be me. I forget freaking everything. So I would I think my issue would be like I would come up with an idea and I'm like, oh wait, I already made that into another book.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes there is that fear of repeating yourself, and I've even noticed where I have not like exactly like one for one repeats or comparisons, but closer than I would like sometimes. But what can you do once it's published? But no
Yeah.
one's called me out on it yet. But please be that big fan that calls me out on it. That's okay.
Have you ever gotten uh this just came to me. I've thought about it a lot, like too much. Have you ever gotten an idea and you're like, did I come up with that idea or did I read it somewhere?
Oh my God, yeah. Well, all the time,
Okay.
and that's a huge fear slash concern. And I spend so much time. I mean, it's harder with ideas, but when it comes to names, and places and maybe some general concepts. I spend a lot of time Googling to see if they pop up in any fashion. When it comes to book titles, even or uh, synopses, I'll even pop them into Amazon and see what pops up to see if there's something similar already. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not the only author that does these things, but it's a huge, huge concern, and I think I've done okay though. I
Yeah.
mean, everything's derivative, and you have to accept that. Everything is derivative of something, and especially this day and age with technology and information the way it is. Um, on the other hand, that really works for me because I can, from my laptop in my home here in Puyallup, Washington, I can travel to Moscow through Google Earth and actually see street level what things look like, and
Oh.
then go over to my book or to my manuscript and start describing what I literally am seeing. And I can do that almost anywhere in the world except for probably North Korea and Iran and one or two other places. But yeah, I do that all the time, and it's awesome. It's like back in the day, you'd have to actually travel. You
Yeah.
hear about authors having, traveling to exotic places so they could write their new novel. I wish I could do that, but it is awesome to have things like Google Earth available to do it virtually.
I never thought about that. That is handy. That's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, the coming up with an idea and thinking that it's someone else's, I always think I'm like, man, I think about that a lot. If I make a joke, I'm like, did I make that up or did I say that? So you kind of get that
Yeah.
anxiety, like, oh my god, am I a poser?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We all
So
are. It's okay.
it happens. Every thought in the world has been thought before.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
where do your characters come from? Are they inspired by real people or are they completely fictional characters?
Oh, they're inspired by the movies and TV shows that I watch and the books that I read, 100%. I mean, I'm a huge MCU fan,
Yeah.
unapologetically. Uh, James Bond, Star Wars, all that stuff. So my characters and the concepts and the ideas are all found elsewhere, and then I just try to figure out my own unique twist to put on it at that point. Um, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm not stealing anything. It's just, for example, in Vampocalypse, he's a half vampire, half human, and yes, he uses swords. Okay, but then what do you do with that? So did or was I inspired by Blade? Yes, I was inspired by Blade, but I'm not going to sit here and say I wasn't because I was.
Yeah.
And if I was a Blade writer on the comic book or for this movie that they can't seem to freaking get off the ground, I've got a book that'll work for them. They just got to tweak it. So
Well, I think it says something to the characters. I mean, Star Wars, MCU, DC, Blade, those are huge characters that make such an impact on us from such a young age too because Blade we were all riding the Blade train. What was it, the 90s?
oh yeah.
So it's like, of course you're going to have something Blade raised us. Of course
Right.
you're going to have something there that was inspired by him.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, I'm unapologetic. Not to a fault, I don't think, but you know, I know where my influences come from, and I can only hope that others appreciate that, and the readers I do have seem to, and don't seem to actually ever come at me with, "Hey, this is just like this," or "This is just like that." I have yet to hear that, which means a lot.
Yeah, that's really great. So, do you have a set process for bringing your characters to life when you write them?
I just gotta write them. So the hardest thing about writing sometimes is actually writing, just getting off my butt and opening the laptop, especially with my day job, which is on a computer already. So
Yeah.
I sit in front of a computer for 8 hours with three monitors, and sometimes the last thing I want to do is open up another laptop and computer after doing that for 8 hours, even though it's something completely different. So the hardest thing is actually opening that laptop and doing it, but then I find that sometimes once I do, next thing I know, it's an hour or two or maybe 3 hours later because I just get sucked into it. So routine wise, not really a lot, other than just to try and get myself to open my laptop every day and do something, even if it is just a few minutes. Do something because if you're not doing something on it, it's not doing itself.
That's true.
Unfortunately, it does not write itself. I have tried and tried. I have yelled at my laptop, write, but it won't write itself.
Yeah, that I feel like because once you start, it's just such a mentally big thing, and it's just you just got off work, and it's like, oh, I just don't want to think anymore. But then once you get into it, you're like, you kind of get lost in it. I
Mhm.
could see that.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah,
If it wasn't fun, you wouldn't get lost in it, and that's
true.
okay.
It's very true. So, what do you do when you're feeling uninspired or stuck in your writing?
Unfortunately, I stopped writing, which is horrible because I'll hit spells where I won't write for weeks or sometimes months, and I'll feel a guilt about that. But then I do have to remind myself that guilt is coming from a place of just it's self-imposed. Even though I have a publisher, it's not like they're looking at me going, "Hey, you have this deadline to meet by such and such for this manuscript and blah blah blah." That's not my reality for me as an author and working with my publisher. So, which I think is good
Yeah,
because I would rather not be forced to write because then I don't feel like it would be genuine because I have forced myself to write some
yeah,
days. And if it's 100% forced, it's just junk to start with, and then you spend more time rewriting it and fixing it, and not enjoying the process. So, for whatever it's worth, when I'm uninspired, I just don't write. So,
that I think that's such a real answer because you ask that, and some people are like, "Oh, I just go for a long walk," or "I find inspiration in nature," something like that. Well, we both know isn't
yeah.
true, but it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, it's like you just don't write. I mean, I agree. I every time I see an author or someone that's like on some kind of schedule, you're kind of like, how though? You don't really know when inspiration's going to strike. So it's like you're kind
Hmm.
of just forcing it.
Exactly, exactly. Sometimes it isn't horrible, if I've got my little one note notes and because that might inspire me. But if it's not happening, no. And I'll try and I'll maybe throw in an MCU movie or something or pull out some comic books to see if I get some inspiration and sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. And again, I just have to remind myself that that's okay.
I love your attitude. It's so chill. It's just like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, that's okay too. And it's just you don't see that very often. Everyone is stressed and everyone is running around just trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I have enough stress. We all do, like you're mentioning, So, and I give I put myself under the gun enough as it is when it comes to my writing. So if I can give myself some space, I'm gonna, because it needs to be fun. If it's not
Yeah.
fun, why the heck am I doing it? You know, if it was the day job and if I was making, my living at this, my attitude would probably be a lot different. But at the same time, I wouldn't be working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week at a completely unrelated different job and then also having to do this on top of that. I'd be able to put in 8 hours a day writing, which I would love. That would be so awesome, and actually that might help me be more inspired because I would have the energy each
Yeah.
morning to just want to get up and dive into it. And unfortunately, even if I wake up with that energy, I can't do it because I've got the day job
Yeah.
kind of in the way.
Well, to segue from what's stressful about that, what has been the most rewarding part of being a published author?
Oh, talking to people at conventions and whatnot. I
Oh,
try to be engaging online, and I've got my Facebook pages set up, which are great, but I don't feel like I'm very good at social media. So being at the conventions where I'm not to a point where I'm being invited, I put in for a table and uh, they select who they select, and I'm very lucky that I get selected more often than I get denied. And I'm to a point where I've been at a few conventions a few years in a row now, like Rose City Comic Con, Washington State Summer Con here locally, and a couple others where, like I said earlier, people found me there a few years ago, and they come back year after year to see what I have out that's new. And being able to talk to not only them but to folks who just stop and want to know about my books, is just amazing. Sometimes the things that happen. I mean, I had one guy who was an Army reservist who he bought a copy of Star Phoenix, and then he wanted to have his picture taken with me. And I'm like, and there's been a few folks who want their picture taken with me, which for one is just, I'm like, wait, what? Okay, I mean yeah, it's an unreal feeling because I don't feel like I'm really that level. But then it especially hit when this Army reservist who has been to Afghanistan, because we had talked and done this thing over there, and he wants a picture with me. I should be wanting my picture with him. That's how I felt. It's like, no, you've done a lot more really in this world than I have in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, so it's those interactions and then the memories that come from that are just amazing and priceless.
Well, I think it's apples and oranges. The guy in Afghanistan, he did do amazing things that we should all be very, very thankful for. But you did something for him too. You brought him joy. You gave him something to be happy about. So apples and oranges, you know?
That's very true. That's very true. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about pursuing a writing career?
Oh my gosh. You, you have to write. I mean, like I mentioned, when I'm feeling uninspired, I just don't write. But then, like I also mentioned, it doesn't write itself. So you have to write. Um, it's hard, but open up the laptop or pull out the notebook or whatever your method is. Go on your phone even. If you keep notes on your phone, and even if it's a little bit moving forward on the project, if you're able to do it every day, great. I tell myself this, and I don't do it every day, but this is the advice I do give. To try and do it every day. Also, and not all authors I've learned are really advocates of this, but I am a huge advocate of reading in the genre that you write. Um, I I I find personally that there is value in seeing how others present what truly are similar or similar-ish ideas. So why not? And you learn new words. I mean, none of us, well, maybe some of us, but no one in the circles I'm running in have this huge vocabulary to where, they're like looking down on folks and their lack of vocabulary. So read, uh, learn new words, learn new phrases, and learn new ways to describe things. And you only get that from reading um, and re- and reading, novels. If you want to be a novel or a writer of novels, not a novel writer, but depending on how you think about that, it goes to a couple of different ways. But a writer of novels, um, yeah, read and see how others are doing it, especially the ones that are successful. And it doesn't mean you're copying their style, but you see what works and what the general public and pick up on and what they truly like. Now that being said, there is a line between writing for essentially the public and for being quote unquote successful and for profit versus writing as an author who just wants to put the stories out there that you want to put out. So you also have to decide what kind of writer do you want to be. Do you want to write for yourself and for your own stories, or are you really just trying to make money at this and selling your soul, whatever
Yeah.
it takes. you know, that's that approach is not me, because I've got my day job that I'm happy with, and that's where I'm making my money. But if one of my novels that I do write for myself happens to hit, I'm not going to complain.
I completely get that. That's kind of the same with podcasting. It's like you don't do it to make money because it's competitive, and it's like just do it because you love it. You want
Mhm.
to have an impact. It's your thing. So
Mhm.
I totally get that. I loved all that advice. I would agree that I think it's a good idea to go read the same genre. I mean, Kevin Feige and James Gunn watch superhero movies that are made by other people. Like they all do it. They do genuinely love the genre. You
Mhm.
can still go read it and enjoy it. You're not looking for ideas. You could look for inspiration, but it's like, what's wrong with that? You're like you said, you're
Exactly.
learning something new from other people.
Yep. Exactly. And you learn what also doesn't work. Potentially, especially when it comes to someone like a Feige, watching others' movies, it's you can easily see, oh, even if you love a movie, well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Um, to me, and granted, I'm not a Feige, but it would seem to me that that would be easier than pulling that same out of like reading, because if you're reading a Stephen King novel that's been a number one bestseller and sold millions of copies, well, where do you decide what didn't work in a novel that's super
Yeah.
successful? So, but still, you can decide for yourself what you want to take from the novels that you do read and how the ideas and thoughts are presented, and run with those.
Yeah, you could see how they handled this situation or how they explained away this situation. There's so
Hmm.
many things you can take and use in your own inspiration. It's not stealing. It's just it's not even really
Exactly.
researching. It's just
No.
enjoying yourself.
Hmm.
So, do you have anything on the horizons we should keep an eye out for?
Uh, don't all authors have things on the horizon?
I don't know. I'm not an author. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, fair enough. Okay. Well, I think all authors do. But that being said, I am actually well, not in the middle. I am almost finished, like this close to being finished, of revising Star Phoenix, which
Oh.
Star Phoenix was my first novel, and it was released 10 years ago, so it's a decade old. And it is the one that Steve Alton worked with me on, but revisiting it, or actually I wanted to maybe just revisit it with a new forward that I could include, and let's maybe make it a little flashier with a new cover and some more aesthetic type changes. So I threw that idea out to my publisher, and she was all, "Well, hey, if you're gonna revise it, let's revise it if that's something you want to do. If you want to go through it, it's 10 years old, and take a look and see if there's anything you want to change or make better." So that's what I've been doing, and I've ended up adding a whole new first chapter and then completely revising the entire very last chapter, and then there is not a single probably page that doesn't have at least a word or something either made better or added or detracted or in some way, because I know more words now as a writer, being 10 years into this thing,
Yeah.
and so it's like, oh, I, I said this the same way a few different times now, I can change that and be a little more creative. And again, nothing that anyone's ever really called me out on, but being able to have this opportunity to revise this in like a 10-year version has been awesome. Plus, I'm tying it into other novels, because my next novel after this revision of Star Phoenix is about a Korean girl who discovers she has sorceress powers
Hmm.
when she turns 16, and I chose Korean because I'm half Korean. My mom's Korean, so a little homage to her because she grew up on a little Korean island, and my mom's hella old. Sorry, mom, but she is. She was born in 1941. So this is about a girl who grew up on an island, not back then, but now. But she discovers she has these powers, and then part of that is as she's learning about the powers, she realizes she can see other, for lack of a better word right now, other realms or other worlds. And what those other realms and worlds are characters and situations from my other novels.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is after I establish her in her own novel with that, then the next one after that, which I've got pages already built into of notes on this, is essentially a crossover event that's going to bring together almost Avenger style all my main
Oh.
characters from all my novels into a big adventure to where they've got a big bad, of course, that they all need to face off against together. And my Korean teenager sorceress is the one that brings them all together because she can bring these characters from these other worlds into hers to help her fight the big bad that she's facing against that she cannot fight alone. So that's what's on the horizon.
That's really cool. So you're of Korean descent. Your mother is Korean and hella old, according to you. Um,
Yes.
that's really cool. I used to live in Korea. I had no idea.
What?
Yeah,
Really? Like
yeah.
for how long?
Up 2, 3 years, 2.5 years.
Was that very long ago?
Yeah, about 12, 13 years ago, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. I was in high school.
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, so I'd like to read that one. Is she going to be living in Korea when all this happens? Like, we're going to see some of the cultural side of her?
She's gonna be. Well, it's gonna start off in America, but then she's gonna end up going to Korea when she
Hmm.
goes to learn more about her sorceress powers.
Ooh.
So that's where she'll learn and how to manifest uh, some of her powers. Will be once she actually gets to Korea.
Well,
So,
I'd love to write a review on that when it comes out.
oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'm really excited. Yay.
right on. Cool.
Yeah. So, this was
You probably
so
know
much.
more Korean than I do, which is horrible for me to say.
It is a hard language. And then you think, like, I might be able to survive there. And then, bam, you have to learn Hangul, which is hard
Oh,
too.
geez.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I might as well just not. It's not well.
All right.
So, this has been so much fun getting to know you even more and hearing about your process. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned a lot from you today.
Oh, awesome. No, this has been so fun. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
You have to come back and talk about your next book that's coming out, and we have to go through all this again because this was too much fun not to do again.
No, hey, I would love it. So, absolutely. No, this is great. Um, but before we go, I want to just throw an idea out there. And this relates to the Facebook page.
Okay.
So if this is a dumb idea, just edit all this out.
Okay.
Hold on just a moment. You can edit that out too.
I
Excuse
sure
me.
will.
Okay, so because it's obviously it's a non-toxic atmosphere, and everybody loves that. And I do notice sometimes where folks will start off a post something to the effect of, "Hey, these are just my thoughts. If you don't agree, please move on. But I'm interested in hearing about people who, what your thoughts are on X, Y, Z, because
Yeah.
these are my thoughts." Um, and that, we don't see that a lot, but I've seen that on a few posts.
Yeah.
So, and my thought is on that because I don't. Again, I'm not very great at social media, but I don't drop a lot of like personal ideas and whatnot. Not only just on this in your Facebook group, uh, but just in general, because I don't want to hear about any thoughts to the contrary. Sometimes, just being fair
No, I
and being and
know.
just throwing it out there, right?
I
So,
know.
and
I
it's
get
not that,
it.
yeah, and it's not that I don't want confrontation or discussion, and sometimes it's very polite, but sometimes I just don't want to see it. I want to be in my little bubble of, hey, if these are my thoughts, can we bring like people in? Okay, so that was a big long way of saying this is my idea. What if there was something to where it was set up to for folks who want to post something like that, at the very top, they start off with something like vibes post. So it lets everybody in the group know, oh, okay, this is, if I'm going to comment, I got to have like vibes on this. And then they can say their thing. So, it was just an
I like that.
idea. And,
Yeah.
the vibes, of course, there's
N- I
anti-vibes.
totally get it. Sometimes I'll post something like, and it's not even just in the group. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but like if I'm
Mhm.
posting that I like something, I don't want to hear that you didn't. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but like you're entitled to your opinion, but go make your own
absolutely.
post. Get off mine. Don't bring me down.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where it comes from. And and of course everyone has their own opinion, and that's okay, and it's not about censoring or anything like that, because that's not the idea. But no, I just want to be in my bubble sometimes, and it's impossible on social media,
I know.
because of just how it's set up and it's the nature of it. But I don't know. I just wanted to throw that your way because it's something that was in my head for weeks now.
I think we've tried something to that nature where we're like only looking for voices of fans of this, and it got blatantly ignored. Like the
Yeah.
two times we tried it, and it's like, because it's like our whole thing is like it's a non-toxic group, but a negative opinion isn't toxic.
Right.
So there's like this very
Absolutely.
thin line where it's like, yes, I respect your opinion, but I don't want it right now. I want to be happy. Like when
Right.
Deadpool and Wolverine came out, there's like two members and they know who they are. And if they're listening, I want you to know I know you, who hated the movie, who absolutely hated it. And on every post they're like, "Oh, the movie sucks. I don't like it." And they had real reasons for not liking it, but I was like, "Go make a post about it then. Go stay in your lane. Let me be
Right.
happy about it."
Yeah.
It's such a weird gray area that you're
Oh,
just
sure.
kind of navigating.
Yeah. No, I get it. Nah. It is
It's
what
a
it
good
is.
idea though. I'm going to bring it to the team and see what they say cuz they'll probably be like, "That's such a good idea. How do we do it?" I'm like, "I don't know. You guys figure it out. I'm doing enough."
For real.
So, now that we're at the end, why don't you tell our listeners where we can find you and where they can find your books?
Great. So I do have a website, of course, author.esbrown.com. And my website does have links to other places where you can find my books, or you can go to these other places directly. My books are available on Amazon.com, Barnes& and Noble, or BNN.com. And then I do have an Etsy site. So through the Etsy site, which is also under author E.S. Brown, go figure, uh, through the Etsy site, you can get signed copies if you like, and I can personalize them, and that's priceless. There's no charge for that. So,
No.
um, and I say that because I genuinely mean it, but at the same time, it actually surprises me. But maybe it shouldn't. I don't know how many folks ask me to sign books that they buy for me at conventions, and then ask me what the charge is or if there's a charge for that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, no. I mean, yeah, should I be charging you for that? Yeah, no, there's a charge. No, I'm kidding. But no, the fact that they even ask, I'm like, no, no, there's no charge. So, like I
Yeah.
said, I say that in jest, but no, there's no charge for autographs or signings or personalizations. But yeah, that's where all my books are available. Sorry, I'm very chatty. I had
You're good.
so here's the thing, Megan. You
Yes.
know, as you know, I had my 8-hour day in front of a computer, and about 2 p.m. it's like, yeah, we're doing that 5-hour energy, and that was after like 8 cups of coffee this morning. Because I have this big podcast interview coming up at 5 o'clock today, and I need to be
Aw.
ready. And now I'm a little over ready because I can't stop talking.
That's
Sorry.
that is the opposite of a problem on a podcast because I've done some episodes where I'll ask them questions and I'll just get like one word answers or they're like no, and then you kind of like nothing else.
Oh,
We interviewed a voice actor who's just like who did that, and I was like, and it was our first one we ever did too. I don't want to call him out, but he was a kind of a dick.
oh,
But after that, I was like, I don't want to interview anyone ever again. And then I interviewed someone else, and I was like, oh, that was just that person. So
yeah.
you have the opposite of a problem right now.
Oh, right on.
So thank you so much for being on with me. It was an absolute pleasure. You're invited back anytime. And this was very exciting for me because it's been so long we talked about doing this, and I'm excited we
Yeah.
finally did.
No, this is so awesome. Yeah, I've been excited for this for decades now. No, no, but yeah, you're right. It did come up, quite a bit ago, and it's like, oh yeah, but you know, it's all a blip. I mean, it feels like yesterday at the same time, and here we
Yep.
are, and I'm so happy to be here and to essentially meet you in person and to be able to say
Yeah.
hi to everybody. And no, this is great. This is exciting, and hopefully maybe some of the folks who tune in um, are aspiring writers and find some inspiration.
Yeah.
But stay in your lane. No vampire books, no female James Bond books, whatever else I write about. No, I'm
And you
kidding.
can have no inspiration from Blade. He called it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's my thing.
Well, like I said, you're an absolute pleasure. Wherever you're listening to this episode, please check the show notes under the episode, and you can find all the links where you can find Ed and all his amazing stuff. Thank you for listening to this episode of the new and improved Vigilante Vibes. Wherever you're listening to this episode, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my amazing guests or future episodes. They're all really great, if I do say so myself. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Have a marvelous night.